Thanks for tuning in to Stock Car Facts and our Part 2 interview with motorsports icon Dave Marcis. In this segment, we'll cover his first NASCAR win in 1971, his first USAC stock car win, the 1969 Talladega boycott, driving the Penske Matador, climbing into the K&K Insurance Dodge, and being hired by the late mechanical genius Mark Donohue. So please have a listen with David Anton Marcis. And yes, I made a mistake last week and stated his middle name was Alan. That's what I get for trusting a certain information website. Thanks for tuning in today for another new and exciting episode from Stock Car Facts, which we try to post every Tuesday at about noon. Or you can watch some of our previous episodes. Here at Stock Car Facts, we would really love to recreate the race day sights, smells, and sounds that we first experienced for ourselves in 1974 at Michigan International Speedway. But unfortunately, that's not possible here. However, we can do the next best thing in that we can share with you what happened at these events, and we can talk to those people who created those memories. Or, those facts. So we'd appreciate it if you sit back and relax and enjoy this latest episode today of Stock Car Facts with me, your host, Kevin Schwarzy. Oh, and by the way, later, you'll have a chance to comment on this content. And, if you haven't already, please hit the like button as well as the follow bell to be notified of brand new shows right here. And we'd appreciate it if you'd share this on all of your social media platforms. Thank you. Today on Stock Car Facts, Mr. Marcis picks up where he left off last week, talking about Milt Lunda, the construction magnate, and the 1969 season, and how the competitors were starting to respect him, as well as the car owners.
So Mr. Lunda actually owned the car when Pete Hamilton drove it in the race at Daytona that year.
Oh, wow, okay.
The deal was between Jim Ruggles and Pete Hamilton and A.J. King. Pete and Ruggles had some kind of a deal, a certain percentage, and the percentage that A.J. King was going to get, if we bought the car or the team before the race, we were going to get that. The car was running good, the car was competitive, Pete was running really, really good. So Milt Lunda decided to buy it, so he made the deal with Mr. King and bought the team before the Daytona 500.
And that's when you guys went to the Mopar stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, because Pete was a Mopar guy.
Yes.
Yeah. So now you're reeling off top fives and top tens and but the Lunda deal only seemed to last for about a couple years, didn't it?
Yeah, well, I guess 2 years. And Milt just felt like that the money being paid, prize money, wasn't adequate for the number of people in the grandstands and what it costs to compete in the sport.
Sir, that's why I need you as a sponsor.
Yeah.
So stay with me.
So he said to me, he said, I'll sell you the team for X number of dollars. I don't remember the figure. We had a pretty nice check coming from the Point Fund. He gave me that and let me pay him slowly as the season went on for the team. So I bought it. I mean, what was my choice? Either let him sell it to somebody else or get out of the sport.
Right. Well, in 71, I've heard it said that Bobby Allison never needed a relief driver. That's not true.
No, that's not true.
Maybe you talk about that at Bristol.
Yeah, I drove a relief for him at Bristol and won the race with his car.
Yes, you did. And there's photos of it here. I've got them with me, and not only that, you seem to be getting pretty popular. Your family started the Dave Marcis fan club, probably one of the first ones out there. You and Richard had started yours about the same time.
Yeah.
And then
Beth Murph was involved in that, and then a lady, Elaine Bass, I think was her name, in Minocqua, Wisconsin. She was involved in helping get the fan club started. And Beth Murph scored our car, and her husband Dick helped us in the pits. And Beth was also in charge of Richard Petty's fan club.
And you were also voted the top independent
Yep.
that year. And then you got the call from well, I don't know if Harry called you or Mr. Crosskopf called you, but you drove the 71 car for the first time and about won Talladega.
Yeah, that was when Bobby Isaac had the kidney stones, and Harry came to me on Saturday afternoon and said, "What's the chance of us getting you to drive the car if Bobby don't get out of the hospital? It doesn't look good, like he's going to maybe not be able to be here for the race if the car was on the pole."
What's a chance? Let me pinch myself. What do you mean, what's a chance?
Yeah. So I said, "Well, I'll find somebody to drive mine. I'll drive it."
Right.
So I got Bill Seifert to drive my car, and I drove the Bobby Isaac K&K Insurance car that day. And, we really ran well, and I led a bunch of the race. And we were leading the race with 6 laps to go, and we lost an engine coming out of the turn 4. And pretty much the rest of the team or the pack of all the race cars, they were in the 3rd turn, and I was coming out of the 4th turn. I had that much of a lead, with 5 laps to go when I crossed the finish line that lap. Well, the engine blew up, and that was it.
You went from winning all these races in Wisconsin to get a little Sigmund Freud on you here. Constant winner. You come south, and now you're kind of mid-pack. Now you're slowly top 5s, top 10s. Okay, now you relief drive for Bobby, win that race. You're about to win the K&K in the K&K car. Does that hurt when you're so used to winning, and then you go to the next level and you're not winning, and then you come so close and...
Yeah, it does, because you're used to winning, but I also understand it's a different circuit. It costs a whole lot more money. You got to have more people involved. Hire people. I didn't have a lot of money to hire many people. A lot of my guys were weekend guys. It was a tough deal. But I came to race. That's what I did. I didn't come just to finish and get some prize money. I don't care if I was running 30th. I raced the guy in 29th, 8th, what have you, to get the next position. And I raced hard the whole race. And I was able many, many times. There was a lot of hope there. I'd qualify in the top 15. Right. I could finish there in a lot of the races. So it wasn't like I was out to lunch.
Right.
We had 40 cars in those races, and I was a lot of times in the top
improving.
20 all the time.
You were moving up the standings.
Right, I got some 10ths and 8ths and 9ths and stuff like that. I was in there. Yeah. I just didn't have the money and the people. So it was tough. It was hard. In those days, there weren't a lot of big sponsors involved in the sport either.
Right.
So it was a lot of work.
And 72, one thing that really annoys me about social media and some of these content creators is they don't say the people's names right. And I don't know how to pronounce his name. Mr. Deppe? D-E-P-P-E.
Dave Deppe.
Deppe. Okay, I had it right. Nothing is more annoying than that. But about that time, you hooked up with him, and then you guys went to, I believe you were driving his Nova when you won that USAC race in Wisconsin at WIR.
Yeah, he had Billy Bembenst, or Bemco, his place was called, build that Nova, USAC. It was a 500-lap USAC race in Kaukauna, Wisconsin.
500 laps at Kaukauna?
500-lap race at Kaukauna.
That'll testament from the boys.
Right, so, Butch Hartman was in it, and Jack Bowser, and Don White. There's a lot of top teams, USAC guys there in the event. But there was USAC, that's when they had that if you had a small block engine, it was like a 100-pound weight advantage. That was Dave Deppe's reason for building the Nova. Mm-hmm. And we ran a small block Chevrolet engine in it. I won that race with that car.
Was it like, oh my God, the Chevy with Dave Marcis at the wheel won this race? You look back through the periodicals and they said, Dave Marcis won the race. Wow. Driving Mr. Deppe, And that seemed to start also a relationship for a few years with Mr. Deppe.
Yeah, he helped sponsorship my NASCAR car in quite a few races. Talladega was one of them and others. So that helped me a lot. Gave me a little bit more money. Helped me buy some tires and stuff. So all that stuff adds up. Goodyear helped me with some tires. They didn't give me all my tires, but they helped me with some tires. And earlier in my career, when Firestone had a big program with a lot of point money if you ran their tires for the season. Goodyear's program was if we put a Goodyear service store ad on our race car, they supplied us X number of dollars worth of tires for the season. I went that route, and I ran very well that year too. And I exceeded that number too, but they still took care of me because I was running up pretty good up towards the front. So
was Firestone still involved in USAC? Because I know they got out of NASCAR in '69,
I think
but they were still in USAC, weren't
they? Yeah. I think they still had the Indy 500 as well.
But were they also involved in the stock cars too into the '70s, or?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that in the USAC program or not. I'm not sure.
I don't recall either. Because I thought they stayed on after the boycott of Talladega is when Firestone got out for good, if I'm not mistaken, right? So, going back to that, what are your thoughts on that race?
The
boycott.
Well, the dispute, the main situation, the dispute was there was no inside retaining wall. And so a lot of people do not know about that. So some of the sponsors that were involved, and I don't know about Ford and I don't know Chrysler's whole situation because they kept a car there, but Richard Petty and Bobby Allison, there were people, David Pearson, and a lot of them talking about the liability if we have a wreck and go through that crowd in the infield and stuff.
And Richard would know since of what happened to him in the drag racing.
Yeah.
He would definitely know.
I mean, I don't understand the whole situation. It was a tough situation for me. London construction on the car. My first year in the sport, full time, and
were you in the wing car that day too, or no?
Yes, that was the wing car. Yeah,
because they were just
that
coming
was
out
the
with
start of it. Yeah. And I called Mr. Lunda up and told him what was going on at the racetrack. And his reply was, well, we sent an entry blank in, and so we're probably liable for a lawsuit, and I would prefer you stay and run the race because we sent an entry in. I said, Petty's leaving, Baker's leaving, the Allisons are leaving.
Do you want me to get wrecked in the next race?
Yeah, everybody is leaving, and I'm trying to get started in the sport. And if I run there and race and everybody's going to hate me, how am I going to get started in the sport?
Right.
So I ended up leaving against his word. But so did basically everybody
did too.
And I sat down with Mr. Bill France Sr. and discussed that with him, and he understood my situation. He said probably I'd have done the same thing. I mean, you were just getting involved in sport. You didn't hardly even know anybody. So I was happy about that. And but that was a situation, and I don't know if that had anything to do with Milt getting out later the next year, but I don't think it did.
You read my mind. I was about to ask you that.
he never brought it up after that. He just accepted what I did as being okay, and I think because everybody left.
Everybody left.
I mean,
well, but you saw what happened to Brickhouse the very next race.
Yeah, and where did he go? Nobody. How can you go compete with 50 guys and not feel welcome?
Right.
It's tough.
Right.
It's tough.
No, thank you.
Yeah, and I'm a get along with everybody type of guy. Right. Anyhow, so
you get along to go along or whatever. Whatever the old saying.
Yeah, mm-hmm. I help others and they help me, and that's what NASCAR in those days was all about. I mean, I had parts of my car from Richard Petty, and if they needed something bad enough and didn't have it, and I'd let them have it, and other teams would too. Because I can remember sometimes Richard saying, "Hey, Buddy Arrington and me and Hilton and I, we got to get all these parts back on the right trucks," he said, "because I'm running out of parts."
You put your names on your parts.
But I mean, we all helped each other. And Petties were willing to help the little guys. So, I mean, it was great.
Nobody wanted to be the guy that didn't help.
Yeah. So
So, like you said, which is a neat segue that you say that because, you weren't driving just the 2-car. You drove for Doc Faustina. You drove for Henley Gray. You drove for Cecil. Doc Faustina, the dentist from Las Vegas.
Yeah.
I think he's still alive, I think.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And see, the deal was there, I was trying to keep my owner's points up. I didn't have the money to have my car ready or run in that race, so, and they were there, a lot of them weren't there to win the race, they were there to run the race,
Right.
be in the race, they liked the race, and so I'm like, hey, how about letting me drive your car, you take the prize money, I'll get my owner's points, try and keep my points up.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it was a good paycheck for the owner's points.
Yeah. So then by the end of 74, the 71 guys call you back again.
Well, that's when Mr. Croscroft from K&K Insurance had the dispute with NASCAR over the engine change from the Hemi to the small block.
Went to run
They
USAC.
withdrew from the sports, and Buddy Baker had to find a different team to drive for, and they were sitting idle. And somewhere around about the latter part of the season, they decided to get back in the sport. I don't know if it was, maybe Chrysler was involved, maybe NASCAR. I don't know who all was involved in what. But they asked me, would I drive the car for them with that small block engine in it in Charlotte? And I said, yes, I would. And I got Jim Sauter to drive my car. So I had my car in the race to keep my owner's points up. So I drove the K&K car there. We ran well, but we had problems with cylinder heads. So my car ended up beating us, actually. And then they decided they were going to run Rockingham. So they asked me to drive again at Rockingham. So I done that. I put Trickle in my car at Rockingham because Sauter had other commitments. And again, we had engine problems with cylinder heads. I think we broke a head. But
a lot of the Chrysler guys were having those problems too.
All the other teams, yeah. And so Trickle ended up out running me too. But anyhow.
But you're making money.
Yeah. So I was at my parents' house for Christmas, and we got a phone call, and it was Harry Hyde saying that they wanted to hire me to drive the K&K Insurance car next year.
Merry Christmas to me.
1975, yeah. So I said, yes, I would. And then we worked the deal out and talked about it after Christmas when I came back home.
Now, in 75, I mean, no offense to you or anybody else, but the only way you're going to beat Petty in 75 is if you have a guided missile at his Carver track. But you guys finished second in points. Second in points to the King that year. And you won your first race. Mm-hmm. That had to be like about time.
Fine with me.
Yeah, well, and not only that, second in points. That's terrific, in front of Cale. Well, David didn't run the whole schedule, so, there was that in front of James, who was, he finished top 3 or 4 in the points.
It was still NASCAR, and it was a lot of teams.
And not only that, it was the first year of that new point system.
Yeah.
That Bob Latford had come up with.
Right, and that was a good point system.
Yeah.
I mean,
not the mileage one, and the purses, and that's another show altogether. Talk about some of the weird NASCAR rules they come up with.
That's a service.
Yeah. Maybe talk about that first win at Martinsville, because that's not an easy place to get a hold of.
Yeah, and then being the first year in that team and all like that, but the K&K Insurance Dodge was always a competitive car with Bobby Isaac in it on the short tracks, and even with Buddy Baker in it, which Buddy preferably was a super speedway man.
But Bobby Isaac won most of his races on short tracks.
Yeah.
I think he only won, 2 or 3 on the speedways, I believe, out of his 30-some wins, I believe.
Yeah, I don't know that record, but it was a competitive race car every week, no matter where it went. Super speedways or short tracks. But so yeah, I mean that was a great accomplishment, and I enjoyed it, and it's like, man, we finally got this first win. And
but did you think it'd take that long?
No, I didn't really think it would take that long. But the money situation and the parts and the hiring the people and no major sponsorship and it was a tough road. It was a tough road.
Was Mr. Croscroft kind of running into financial problems about then, maybe? Because it took 2 years and he sold it. I don't think they were. I guess I'm referring to me as a little guy trying to get up to that point.
But our biggest problem for him that year was dropping out of races. It wasn't wrecks and things. It was just
Right.
problems with them little blocks with the cylinder heads.
But do you think he was starting to kind of run into a little bit of money problems? Because he sold the middle of 77 to Mr. Stacy.
Yeah,
So he's only in the sport another couple of years. When
I don't know.
Came in.
I don't think so. I mean, he insured on just about every racetrack.
Right.
So I don't think so. I think maybe he just got tired of it. I don't know.
You mean you guys actually retire from this?
Yeah.
You're kidding.
But then, we had a great season in 76. And,
Yes, you did.
And then the season ends and you ain't got a ride. The team gets sold. I won all the polls. I won Talladega. Next weekend I won the Atlanta Journal 500.
And you dominated that race too.
Yeah. And I mean, holy smokers. And now he ain't got a ride.
Well, you won in 76. You won all those polls. You won Richmond. You won Talladega. And you won, now what's the talk now? Short tracks, super speedways, and intermediate tracks.
Yep.
And you won at Atlanta.
Yep.
And like I say, at Atlanta,
Two 500s back to back.
Right. And you led over 200 laps in that Atlanta race and beat David, I believe, on a late caution.
Yeah, Pearson, yeah.
Yeah. And I think Cale was a lap down. I think he was in the mix, but a lap down. But
yeah, I think David and I, we lapped the field, yeah. I mean, the Woods Brothers car at Atlanta with David is always
well,
the car to beat.
He won 10 races that year in 76.
Yeah.
So for you to beat him, and then, like I say, on all those polls. So were you thinking, was there any kind of warning that, okay, he's going to sell the team, I'm out?
I didn't know about it, unless I was too wrapped up in other stuff, but I was not aware of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
But he didn't sell right away, right? I think
it was after the season, and I don't know, was it yet in that year, or was it in 77? I'm not quite sure. But I didn't know it at the end of the season that I wasn't going to have a ride next year.
But you went to Roger Penske. So, he wasn't running the full deal. But, he's got a Formula One team at the time. He was Mr. Indy 500, the captain,
Yep.
and unfortunately, he just lost Mark Donohue, Captain Nice, a couple years before. He had engineers before anybody even thought of having engineers in racing. So were you kind of excited to go, hey, I'm back driving for Roger? I drove his Matador.
I was really excited about it because I had already worked for Roger and drove the Matador. Again, he didn't run all the races. And for me to make a living, I pretty much needed to run all the races. But Roger was probably one of the best people I ever drove for, and Roger gave me a salary. Nobody else done that.
So at least you could count on Dustin just coming in every week.
Yep.
You could budget.
So in 77, when he done that, he told me to go down to the Chevrolet place and pick out a car that we would, the wife would like. So we got a station wagon and we had two little children at that time also, and our son Richard and Sean Marie, and so that was great. But Roger, he just decided, that he did want to get in NASCAR, but he realized you need to be here.
Yeah.
Up and down the road, these guys are home working on the cars, and you ain't even back to your shop yet. So, he said, I want to get in the sport, but I'm not ready yet, and I gotta
do it right.
Yeah, it's to do it right. We got to be here. So I'm not ready to do that yet.
He had IROC going on. He had Formula One going on. He had Indy going on, and by the way, a few Chevy dealerships going on. And he was running MIS.
Right.
And
so I got hired. I got hired then, to do the IROC cars.
Oh, at that time. Okay, it started in the 70s.
I can't remember exactly when was the first IROC race when they had the Porsches. Was that 79 or
73, 74?
Okay, so 2 years of Porsches.
Yeah.
And then the Camaros.
Yeah.
And Mark Donohue actually hired me to help test the Camaros. And those were the Camaros that were built in the Penske shops, I think in Reading, Pennsylvania. I don't think he was in Newtown Square then yet in New Jersey.
I don't think he was yet either.
I believe the shop wasn't. But anyhow, Mark was the one And so that also gave me a paycheck, and that's actually what kept me in business in my NASCAR program.
Well, not only that, kept you up on probably some of the top end, engineering and
Right.
Different, oh, we found this, we found that.
And Roger allowed me to take the race car to a couple different races, his car, my people, and run some NASCAR races with it.
Okay.
And he helped me out with the tire bills.
Okay.
Roger did.
Yeah. Okay.
So that was a big plus for me.
That's Miss Helen, Dave's wife. Hello, ma'am. Thanks for having me in here. I appreciate it. Stock Car Facts is one of the reasons I thoroughly enjoy YouTube. Thanks to a well-respected former NASCAR Cup and ARCA crew chief and their spouse for this observation. Kevin's voice is very reminiscent of Chris Economaki's. And here's some folks we can't thank enough and can't do without. And last but not least, while driving for the captain, Roger Penske, he wanted Dave Marcis to drive one of his Indy cars? Tune in next week and hear that story.
When I drove the Matador at Darlington, we tested down there, and we were extremely competitive in the test. It looked like maybe we could win a race with the Matador. Gary Bentonhausen was driving one of the Indy cars. Went and ran a short track race at Syracuse, I believe it was. Was not supposed to do what Roger told him, no short track dirt or whatever, and got hurt. I think we can win this race. And well, it won't be no problem. We can get plenty of practice. We'll fly you back and forth with the Learjet and this and that. So Roger said to me, I want you to run the Indy car at Ontario. And I said, Roger, I'm a stock car guy. Thank you to all of our great friends here at Stock Car Facts for your views, for your shares, for your comments, and for hitting that notification bell. Some have asked how they can get involved further, and we always say, please follow these links to partner up with us financially. When you do, we'll send you some really cool racing swag and souvenirs that we've accumulated over the years. Either way, thank you for your support, and we'll see you here on Tuesdays around noon.